Awesome. And I'm gonna record this so I have it for other people, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. No, not at
Okay.
all.
All right. All right, we'll get everybody in here. Yeah, make sure you have your cameras on. Really excited that you guys are here. I think we'll have a few more joining us, so I'll let them in as they come in. But so Nicole, just to give you a heads up, these are some of the people that I have worked with. I have a few cross country runners, some of which are high level runners, and I thought, what an opportunity to bring someone in that ran at a high level, has been around it, and now has kids that are competing. And I just thought, who better to reach out than to you? So thank you so much for coming on here and be willing to answer questions and just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Oh, happy to do it. Thank you. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah,
Always happy
absolutely.
to help out the next generation. I'm excited to hear what everyone's up to.
Cool, cool. Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to have Nicole introduce herself, but I love that she's a local girl to us, maybe not to some of you, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about like where you grew up, what kind of sports you're in, how cross country became a part of your life, that kind of thing.
Sure. I actually grew up probably only 100 yards from where Kathy lives now. So in Olivia, small, sounds like not everybody's local, a small town, like farming community of probably 2,000 people in Western Minnesota. And born and raised there. I did cross country, track, basketball, youth soccer, youth flag football, all the neighborhood things. But always, I don't know if some people say they just grew up loving running. I think as early as running the mile, in probably third and fourth grade, knew that I had a knack for it, and I was probably especially drawn to individual sports. And probably even went out for basketball my first year as a seventh grader just to get in shape for basketball. But quickly kind of became something I was proficient at. And again, I liked that the more you put into it, the more you could get out of it. It was a kind of a direct linear relationship. And then was fortunate. I won a number of state championships in cross country and track. And probably around my sophomore junior year, I knew that it was a way to pay for college. And my parents had always kind of put that on us and said it would be our responsibility. So it was never a question of if I was going to be a college athlete. It was just a matter of where. And so um, I visited a number of places, or took all five. At that point, you could take five official visits, and I took a couple unofficial visits. I went to SDSU and NDSU as unofficial visits, and then I went to the University of Minnesota. I went to Arizona State. I went to Notre Dame. I went to the University of Tulsa, who had a good program, and then in Northwestern were my five official visits. And I think the Gophers were a big draw just because they were close to home. And then it quickly kind of became between Notre Dame and Northwestern. I was always academics were always important to me, and so I wanted kind of the mix of Big Ten or at least kind of Power Five at that time, Power Four conference athletics, and then a good school. So that's where I ended up. There were lots of twists and turns along the way. I actually track was my first love, and when I was signing with Northwestern, they were adding a track program, and they never added a full. They actually to this day do not have a full track program. They have like a distance team that can compete in track events, but I could never have won an NCAA championship in track, and I couldn't even win a Big Ten championship in track because it's you can just go to meets unattached. So and the coach I signed with left after 2 years, which she was I mean, she was probably the youngest coach who recruited me, the only female coach. And she got engaged while I was there and left to move in with her fiance before at the end of my sophomore year. So lots of twists and turns. But spoiler alert, she came back with her husband. Now she's probably my closest friend. I'm running with her tomorrow, and she's my
Awesome.
youngest goddaughter. So it all worked out in the end.
That's super cool. Super cool. I love that journey. I love that you went out for cross country to get in shape for basketball because I can totally relate to that. Although I was the one watching you at cross country meets and cheering you on in the distance while I was running way behind you. So, yeah, it was fun to see your journey go on in cross country and then later in college. That was super cool. Um, and you said about your sophomore junior year, you knew you wanted to run in college. That was kind of your.
I don't ever remember. It's interesting. I think kids now are a lot more aware of college athletics and the doors it opens. I didn't have anyone in my extended family, and even at the time, again, Bold or Olivia, where I grew up, was a small town, so I knew there were some people maybe playing Division III type sports, but I didn't. I don't think my parents ever said like, "Look, this is a way people will essentially pay your tuition." I think the first time I heard that was from a coach, and it seemed like, oh, well, why wouldn't you do this? I don't know that
Mhm.
it's set out. It sounds naive looking back, but I don't think it's set out to be a goal. And then when I went on various recruiting visits, you really kind of get pitched on just I think the networking opportunities, the obviously like tutoring and internship opportunities that are available to athletes. Like I was really drawn to kind of the things, the whole package that went along with it. And as simple as, I mean, you're 16, 15, 16, 17, the free shoes and the gear and all that stuff. I was like, well,
Yeah.
wow, this is
You're
great.
like,
Like I
come
had no
on,
idea.
yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea it existed, but then I was like, there's nothing else for me. This is perfect.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk about mindset and running, because obviously that's a lot of the areas that I touch on that kind of thing. And talk about, your progression with running. Did you ever hit a point where you thought, I don't know if I can do this? Did you ever come to a point where it was harder than it used to be? And how did you get through that? What are some of the things that you did maybe in training or your mindset? Talk about that kind of thing.
That no, that's great. I always, I think, built a lot of my confidence from the idea that I can outwork the next person, both with like training and then also like in I can go to a place of being uncomfortable and stay there. And I coach like fourth to eighth grade cross country now, and we talk a lot about that. Like it's I think and I say the the work, the training you put in is probably less than a quarter of the whole thing. It ends up being like the ability to work day in and day out and the effort you can put in, and then just that mindset of staying in a place where you're uncomfortable longer than somebody else. And I think it's kind of that battle, like you can call it mind over body, or just the ability to say it's temporary, but stay there. I think anybody with running, there are injuries, there are times where it becomes more difficult. I think it can be a lonely sport, right? Like a lot of times it's, like I think you've got to, and I never really had a team. It's funny now. I sometimes get emotional. We're actually leaving tomorrow. My oldest daughter and my next oldest son are part of the boys and girls teams who have made it to, and again, elementary school cross country, but
That's
the first
awesome.
programs in school history that have made it. And I see the team aspect, and I can kind of be emotional because I never had that. And I think that can be, um, I miss the ability to lean on that. And I started to see it in college, where you can really like lean in and you're doing it. It's almost for the greater good. And we'll talk about it. Like you can give up on yourself. But when it's like, okay, you're the third runner or you're the fifth runner, that's going to, kind of determine how your team does. It's almost easier, and I don't know how the mind works this way. It's almost easier to say, okay, I don't have it today. But when it's like my team needs me
Yeah.
today to do this, um, it's hard to let those people down, especially because I think I'll often say, kids that are looking or parents that are looking for something for um, an incoming freshman at a big high school, and the same thing, like looking to get in shape for hockey or looking to get in shape for basketball. It's such a great, you're kind of forced to be social. Like you can't have your phone when you're running. You got to do something to pass the time. So
Hmm.
it's really hard not to form those bonds, even if and I probably would say I was an introvert by nature. But certainly, like some of my best friends to this day, or almost all of my best friends to this day, are girls I ran with or other college athletes, who kind of went through. There's a bonding that happens when you're kind of in the trenches together.
Yeah, I love that. Talk a little bit about how. the ability to push through transferred to other sports for you and helped you, but not only other sports, but your career too, and your drive in school, things like that. How did that impact you?
I think the first thing, and I don't know if it quite directly applies to you to what you're saying, but I think certainly like the ability to time management. And even as I got more success and had more success, I was managing a full, again, basketball is my first love, and always I was a varsity, playing on the varsity in 8th grade and starting as a freshman. So that was taking up a lot of time, but finding the time then to still run a little bit. And I was never a huge mileage person. And even in college, the times I was running the most mileage were the times I was kind of broken down. And I noticed it now. People always be like, "Oh, you run in college, you must do marathons." I did one marathon. It's just not, my body doesn't react to that amount of stress. At the same time, I kind of saw another level of my running when I was able to, just keep, doing whether it's 20 or 25 miles a week in addition to basketball. And when you've got, you're doing your schoolwork, and I'm sure the demands on you guys are even more than it was when I was growing up. But you really have to prioritize. And I think at the same time you have to, I was always like social, had good groups of friends, but it really became kind of like the number one thing was like, okay, I'm getting, it's Thanksgiving break and Thanksgiving weekend. We're going to see family. I've got to get a run in. I've got to, I'm going to get my shots up for basketball. And that I look at kind of throughout my whole, even having kids and continuing to work at a high level. And I work in like financial markets, and I'm up pretty early in the morning. I think that has those habits that started with like getting up to run before school, because I knew I'd be at basketball practice from 3 to 6 p.m. have
Mhm.
have it's just kind of it's a habit. It's the way I kind of have run my life. And I think even I look at I think we're a lot more open with like mental health struggles and things, and balancing all the demands. And I think it's like, again, it's even more stressful to be it's getting more stressful to be a teenager and younger than that by the day. But for me, like that pattern, and I noticed that even with my kids, that like knowing what to expect. And if it's as simple as like I don't feel like getting up in the morning and doing it, but I do it and I feel good afterwards, it's the same thing that I think I've brought to a lot of areas in my life. It's get up. I like to read my market recap like at 5:30 in the morning, even before I go on my run. I like to I listen to a lot of financial podcasts when I'm running, which is kind of dry. It's like two dry things at the same time. But
I
I
love it.
just am like a regimented kind of creature of habit. And I think so much of that comes from even just the cadence of running and the repetitiveness. And I do think, there are, anytime I look back at my life and look for, we all go through periods of stress. Um, and you can't, and sometimes you're injured, or sometimes just life is, there are days. I worked for a hedge fund for a number of years, and I remember being pregnant and working like through Brexit, which is something you won't, it predates you, but sitting down at a trading desk at like 6 in the morning, and knowing that I wouldn't like get up and like food was delivered. Obviously, I'd use the restroom, but for like 40 hours, I didn't leave the desk. Like I remember, literally someone putting you in a cab because you were like delirious to sleep when a market, news, something like that would happen. Um,
Crazy.
and I think it enables you to kind of go to that place in your mind that not everybody can do. At the same time, like I look back at especially stressful times at work or in family where I wasn't running, and I don't think I ever missed it. And some people are like, "Oh, I need to," I just love it.
Hmm.
But it's a certain, to me, it's a therapy is kind of a corny way to think, but it just
Hmm.
is like a pattern to my life that keeps me. I'm a better human being. I'm a better mom. I'm sure my husband would say a better wife when I have something active. And it's not, sometimes I've gotten into rowing at points in my life. Sometimes I'm lifting more than I'm running, but it's certainly something I'm very grateful, because it's definitely kept me, I think, higher performing, and then also just happier and more at peace at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And I love that running can be a part of your life for the rest of your life, and that you don't need a facility to do it, or, you can access it wherever you go. I love that.
Oh, I
Ta-
say that all the time I say that to like as I'm coaching. I've coached all different, we have 80 kids on a cross country team, and they're young and all different. Some kids that already I could say could run in college, and some kids who are, it's a struggle to get them to run a mile. But if they come away from one thing, it's that, that first job when you're running, when you're working 60 hours a week, and you're away from home, and you're trying to figure out the world, you can go out and get a hard workout in 25 minutes. Like if you can't carve out 25 minutes of it, and that's door to door,
Yep.
It's really been, it really is a blessing, not to oversell it, but
Yeah.
I'm
No,
glad,
I agree.
I'm glad I've had it.
Yeah, for sure. Talk a little bit about, nutrition and how you learned more as you became a runner and how you adjusted that, and then also your recovery, how you handled that.
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, if I could look back, the one thing, and my husband will talk about this too. He played football, and I think there was just so much less research. And maybe I've always really enjoyed food, so it's maybe I wasn't as disciplined as I could have been there. Like I think there's just so much more information, even at your, like even on Instagram, where you can follow really healthy
Hmm.
ideas. And I think I'm better. I still am never, I really don't limit anything because again, I say I'm pretty active. But I wish I'd been just smarter with fueling, and getting like protein and things up when I was running. I will say, and this is like anytime I talk to like young, I do like a women in finance panel, and it probably doesn't fit in there. But there is so much, um, there's a lot of pressure, and I don't think, you think of eating disorders and disordered eating a lot with gymnastics and figure skating and things where there's like a real like pressure on how a body looks. I would say, and I mean it from I mean it from the bottom of my health. I was fortunate to never ever have an issue with it, but it was so prevalent, um, on people on other teams, and then there was always people struggling with it on our teams, and I'll mentor athletes now. And when you're in it, like I think it's kind of a crutch. Like I think it's a quick way, like, yeah, you lose a little bit of weight and you see it, you see a return. But I would just caution, when it's hard to say, and not that all of you will go on to have kids and go on to have families, but at like, 16 to 17 to 25, like there's a direct correlation with the women now who I knew as girls who really restricted eating and have had issues, both with like bone density and continuing to break down, and then issues having a family if that's the way they choose it. And I've had some of them look me in the eye and very emotionally and been like, I wish someone told me it was never worth, struggling with things for the next like 30 years. And again, my heart goes out to them, because you don't think, you just think of like, okay, this is another way. It's that mindset, like, what can I do to be better? Um, I always felt like I was running so much, and I had great coaches, and we had great nutritionists at Northwestern. So maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. I wish I'd have eaten like just smarter, and I mean, I'd eat a lot of pizza and a lot of
Yeah.
quesadillas because it was cheap, and
Yep.
that's what we did. Um, but the other end is yeah, my heart breaks for, because it's kind of a temporary fix, right? Too,
Mhm.
and I saw it so many times, and I don't know. I hope none of you have ever seen it or are struggling with it. But if you can learn from someone else's mistake, then this call will be beneficial in that end. But you see it. There's an immediate response, right? You do get faster, and sometimes it lasts 2 weeks, and sometimes it lasts 2 months. But it's really hard when you flip that switch, and especially when runners see that, okay, this is working, it becomes like a disordered way of thinking almost
Hmm.
immediately. So I would be, and I've had, all American runners go back and say, I wish someone had sat me down or pulled me away and said, you're not running until we get this under control, because it really impacted so much of their life going
Hmm.
forward. And I think, and it's a very natural thing, because right, like again, you almost have to be a little bit, I don't want to say obsessive. I think that's a negative kind of, but it's just so regimented. It's so like, it just, the putting miles, like it's such a repetitive thing that it's very easy
Hmm.
to take it to other areas of your life.
For sure.
Um, and it breaks my heart to see it happen. I've rambled on long enough where I forgot the question, but,
No, you're good. You're good.
it's just, yeah, I wish there was even more more out there. And again, I'm not a college athlete now. I do say, and I've got friends that I do think, some of the strongest athletes I've thought of, like in, at the NCAA level and even at the Olympic level, like I think of like St. Pierre Perrier, a 1,500-meter runner who's, had a baby and has come back
Yeah.
healthy. They're much stronger, and there's so much about like building muscle. Like Caitlin Tui, same thing. I do think the most successful athletes we've seen are really strong runners in the last. I've seen that as a shift, and I think that's such a good message to send because there's so much more longevity in it that way. And again, you're seeing people like getting stronger, into their early 30s, late 20s and early 30s. When people would have said 20 years ago that was past your running prime, which I think all
Yeah.
stems from nutrition and
Yeah.
making good choices and doing the work as opposed to kind of looking for a cheat code.
Yeah, for sure. Did you introduce weightlifting when you were running, and was that part of your regimen, or was that not introduced yet? Because I know that was kind
No,
of,
it was. We had, so we had the same, like Northwestern now has like very specific strength coaches for each sport.
hmm
And we were kind of on the cusp of like, it's so good to do weightlifting. We were doing what you'd laugh at now, just a lot of powerlifting, a lot
yeah,
of things that you wouldn't necessarily like. I think a lot of the things now are band work and like prehab type things. And even the things I'll do like hip flexor sequences now just to stay healthy. I'm like, oh, I only knew this 20
right?
years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
However, I never really I had some health issues that were unrelated to like bone density but I never had any overuse injuries. And so I do think, it wasn't probably exactly what we should have been doing for mid distance and distance running, but no, I think the weight training I was doing at Northwestern certainly contributed to durability. And I do a lot even with the young athletes now. It's body weight things, and
yep,
balance things. But I think it's so good, just for flexibility and for mobility and just all those stabilizer muscles. I think it makes you a lot less injury prone.
yeah, yeah, awesome. Talk about recovery and how you manage your recovery between seasons, after races, those kind of things.
We were and it was mandatory, I think, kind of before. There's a lot about cold plunging now, and a lot of people do it for, really quick. We have a cold tub here at the house, but we had to be in, we had to check it off. We had to spend 15 minutes, shoulders down, like 4 times a week. And now, I don't know, most people, like all the research is like, I think it's refreshing and it builds endorphins and stuff if you're in there, 60 seconds or
Right.
whatever. But I still will and my kids the same way if they're doing it. It's to really cut down on inflation, right? Or inflammation. So you're
hmm
down, and actually spending the time in there. And to me, it's the first 90 seconds are the worst anyway, then you're kind of numb. A
Yeah.
lot of stretching. We always got massages, and I'm even now pretty religious about massages. I never was a big foam roller, but I am a big like muscle scraper. If you've got it, kind of looks
hmm
like a flat metal, and I'll do that now. Even anything that I think it increases blood flow to a little area. It's those stabilizer muscles. You can see a lot of the demos on it online, but and I think you can pick one up on Amazon for $5 or something. But I'm big into that. And then rest. I think we had 10 days of mandatory rest and rest like nothing, no cross training, not even in the pool, in the after cross country, and then again after the track season. And it was funny, our coach would always be like, if I see you somewhere, like there's gonna be a disciplinary, like because we'd have girls that similar kind of obsessive mindset that would go on the bike during these recovery things. I
hmm
always was like, this is great. Like not only am I recovering, like I'm going out these nights, I'm gonna fit
Yeah.
2 months of socializing and 2 months of extra studying into these 10 days. And you're gonna have to tell me when I can run again. So I liked it. I still I'm still I think I still run better to this day with at least a day off a week of recovery. I just think it's a recipe for longevity and cuts down on some of those nagging injuries. I don't see the benefit in just beating your body down.
Mm-mm.
And maybe I think maybe if you're running the 10K up to the marathon, I see where you have to put that sort in, but I think we're talking cross country, so 2 miles to 6K. Absolutely, I think a day off a week is important.
Yeah.
And especially if you're ever introducing like a two a day, or you're you're getting in mileage that way, then Sundays, a lot of people are like, oh, Sunday, like, I don't know if you're like Sunday church or the long run, like kind of that's a running thing that people do a long run. My long run was always Monday, and Sunday was always off. And even to this day, if I'm doing a long run, it's Monday morning to start the week off on kind of doing something productive. But Sunday is, I rarely ever do anything other than
Awesome.
watch kid sports, my own
Watch
kids.
kids. Yeah. So tell everybody how many kids you have, first of all.
I don't like to lead with it because I would judge me. We have five kids, and my husband and I got married. We thought if we have a boy and a girl, we'll have two kids and we'll be done. And here we are. So I do understand how it happens. They're all kind of in a row, and the first two are very. I feel like I have two oldest children. They were easy babies and easy kids, so they helped get me into this mess. But I have a sixth grader, a fifth grader, a fourth grader, a second grader, and a first grader. No third grader. And
Insane.
they're all, yeah, they're all at the same school. So there's a method to the madness, and they all are pretty, um, but knock on wood, they're good friends. And when they're almost by virtue of a big family, they're forced to do a lot of things together. They'll ask if they can do something. I'm like, as long as you can find a sibling, I'm not bringing one kid anywhere, but if I can bring two or three
Yeah.
kids somewhere, you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
Um,
Awesome. And your husband played at Northwestern. He played football.
correct.
Yep. Yep. So you have a little bit of competitiveness in the house.
Yes, we do. And I think he would probably say I'm more competitive than he is. He does yeah, and he does a lot of youth coaching too. Um, I always say it's funny, like when you're coaching and when you're talking to people, you have to kind of forget how competitive you are, and you have to kind of think about how to reach somebody at where they are competitive. Like you can't want to win more than your kids, and you also can't want to win less than the kids you're coaching.
Right.
And
Right.
I also say, we've got, by virtue of having a big team, um, it's we got to keep some things fun. But for some kids, like working hard and being really driven and achieving goals, that's their idea of fun. So it's hard to manage, and I've got the same thing in my household. I've got some kids that are, type A and
Yep.
very regimented, and winning is fun, and some kids that are goofing around and they keep everyone on their toes too that way. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we've got a coach on here. So how do you coach those kids that aren't super competitive, but also, you have the kids that are competitive? What's your secret sauce to reaching those kids?
that's a great question, and I think I've kind of come full circle. And I've probably coached at different levels for 15 years now. I think early on, I was very like, I'm going to do everything I can to motivate you. Um, even if I think you're kind of faking an injury or you're trying to get out of a workout, I'm going to, talk you through this. And I really backed away from that one, because you're spending a lot of your energy and a lot of your talent on the kid who wants it the least, right? And who kind of gets then ignored is the kid who's putting in a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and so now, I'm pretty clear. I'm pretty clear with parents. I'm pretty clear with everybody. Like, we've got practice 3 or 4 days a week. Here are the days. Here's kind of what it's going to look like. I'm not going to tell you exactly what practice looks like, but these are the days that it's going to work hard. You're going to work hard. If you've got something nagging, or you've got, a lot of kids, I think, which is great. We got probably everybody on our whole team is a multi-sport athlete. If you've got, if you're going to play, a soccer tournament in Nashville and that's your priority, absolutely, like, and you need a day off from rest, don't even come, don't come, like you figure out what's right for you. And then also, if a kid comes up to me, and it kind of breaks your heart because you're trying to build a team, but I'd had a girl on our team all year who last year was like our number 3 runner, and we really needed her to be there again this year, but just her heart wasn't in it. And I'm like, and she'd come up, oh, this is hurting, or this is hurting, my stomach's hurting. I kind of now add practice. I'm like, okay, you decide, you decide. You tell me what you want to do. We can modify it. You can go slower, or you can sit on the grass and watch the kids. And I don't know that. I don't think it's a secret recipe for success or anything. But to me, it's almost has better results than like the hand holding and calm
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? It
Hmm.
doesn't always work. And usually if something's really hurting or they really are kind of under the weather, um, that's great. You got to listen to your body too. And again, I think it
Hmm.
gives them permission to sit, and I'm not inside your head. I don't know what it's doing. But I think that guilt almost gets them, or the desire to like, they see other kids working hard, the desire to be part of that
Yep.
works as good. So I'm kind of done with, and I'll tell, right too. And a lot of kids, I don't think they get that. I think they're used to, I don't want to say being coddled, but they're used to someone saying, well, no, this is what we're doing now. You got to come on, you can do it. And if you throw right back and are like, no, hey, there's a spot in the shade. Clap for the runners as they come by. We're gonna do,
Hmm.
4 times 800, and we'll meet you back when we jog back to school. A lot of times they'll get in there for one or two. So that's kind of what I've been running with lately.
Yeah, awesome. So talk about like going back to, when you competed, but also when you coach kids. So talk about like your routine pre-race as far as the mental side goes. What kind of things did you do to mentally prepare for a race? And also what are you helping your athletes do to mentally prepare for a race?
So probably the biggest thing I can say in all areas, professionally, running, all athletics, is I always kept a notebook. And I actually had I grew up Catholic, a religion teacher who was not Catholic. They just were looking for a guy to, you might know, do you know Mark Hain,
Yeah,
in town? Like that.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think he's religious at all. He gave me this. I've always, like a million times, I've said I should write him a letter and tell him how much this has impacted my entire life. He taught
crazy.
our CCD classes. I think it was fifth grade. They couldn't get anyone to do it. And he came in and he had this like newspaper clipping, and he said, if you write down your goals and you look at them, it's like the single greatest way to achieve them. And you got to look at them like every single day.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I got this little notebook. I'm like, Mark Hain says that. I've never heard it before. At this point, I'm, 10 years old. Kept it between my mattress and box spring and everything. I want to get
Nice.
100% on my spelling test. I want to win this race. I want to do this in a workout. I want to score this many points. And my entire, even up to every workout, I think I've ever done, there's, how I wanted to run. And so now as a coach, when we start the year, first day, when I inherited the program, the former coach was like, yeah, you got it. Here's the goals for the season. Here's what parents like to see. And he's like, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're trying to build. I'm like, who set these goals? He's like, well, this is what I want. And I'm like, yeah, I mean,
That ain't gonna work.
I want to hear what the
Yeah,
kid. Yeah, what do the kids want? I mean, if
yeah.
I would like to go to state. I would like to have, a sub 5 minute miler in eighth grade. I would like to have all these things. But if I don't have a kid that wants to do that, it doesn't really matter what I want to have. So we sit down, and it's got to be, you got to give me at least two goals in three areas. So they've got to be two. They don't have to be running goals, because some kids are there, like you said, just to get in shape for another sport. Um, you got to give me something for school. That's where you're spending, the most of your time. That's 30 hours in a week. You got to give me a couple academic goals, and you got to give me a goal that's outside of like, so it's academics and or extracurriculars and sports. So if it's a theater or a music, you play an instrument goal, that's one thing. And then it's got to be something that you think is like contributing to society or making your home life better. So if I want to help mom with the dishes, I want to, volunteer at the soup kitchen. I want to just look people in the eye. We talk a lot about just looking people in the eye when
Hmm.
you're meeting people, on that, introducing yourself to officials is a big thing. Like anytime anyone's volunteering at a race, the whole team goes up, like, and I'll say, hey, coach, or hey, thank you for volunteering. We're working on, you know, um, making eye contact with the adults to ask them about their day. It's going to take a little while because we've got a lot of kids, but they'd all like to thank you for being out here. So that's a lot of the goals they set.
Cool.
And then I asked them, like, yeah, before now, if this is important, like, here's your big goal. Like, I want to go to state, or I want to, improve my, I want to be in high math instead of like regular math. Okay, what are we going to do? You gotta, we encourage you. And some kids don't. I mean, well, they don't share them with me, so I don't know if they share it. Like, find a couple stakeholders, people that you think are aligned, whether that's a teacher or your parent. If you're able, if you think it'll be helpful and you think they can hold you accountable, share that goal with them. And then
Hmm.
also, let's try and break it down into like, what should I be doing this week in order to like keep progressing towards that goal. And so I give them a little, like Amazon, we get like, 100 notebooks and put a sticker, Red Hawks cross country sticker on the front. And I'll have some, again, 70 kids. I'll have some that every day they come right on Monday and they're like, hey, look, see, I said I want to run 6 minutes for my mile. And I ran 5:49, and now I'm putting 5:45 and they're very like, and they like talking about it. I have some that I don't. I'm sure they never write anything in the gold notebook after the the first time of the year. But I know I've got a couple of my own kids. They keep saying the same thing under the mattress.
Yep.
I'll sneak in there once in a while if I'm having a bad day and look at their goals. But I think it's the single greatest thing. It's the same thing. I start my day at work. Like I said, I worked in the hedge fund industry for 20 years, and then I founded my own firm. I have a couple people working for me, but we do like a kind of like an outsourced family office, wealth management, and trading firm. And same thing, Monday, like what do I want to accomplish this week?
Mm-hmm.
Both, what's got to get done, and then what's kind of the goal? What do I like? And I'm always pretty religious about like a 3, 6, 9 month plan. And
Awesome.
so it's and I like to cross things off when I reach them, and then a lot of times they just get written to the next week because nothing happens overnight. But I'm a big just looking at it and keeping it in front of you keeps you on task, and it almost for me, frees up my mind, right? Like it becomes partly a to-do list, partly the things I want to remember, partly the things I want to do. But I find I sleep a lot better. It does the habit of it and the repetition of it keeps me a little bit calmer. And I'll say the same thing. I do have one son who really struggles with nerves. And he's done that a lot better with the goal notebook. I'll be like, you just write it down, write what you've done this week to get to your goal. So and read those things, like write what has gone well. Like he'll a lot of times look at after a good race or he wrestles. He's a quarterback. He plays a lot of basketball. Like if you've got a good game, write down how you felt, write down what you did, write down what you ate, write down what worked and what didn't. And then, if he's coming up at 8:30, he's like, gosh, I'm nervous. I'm, getting in just on the edge of emotional. I'm like, hey, go back and look, go back and find, and he'll date everything. Go back and find, when you were in a really good mindset, when you everyone has those days where, oh gosh, I played 2 flag football games, a basketball game. I won a cross country meet, everything went great. And you have the opposite too. But when you're in that, when they come home and they want to sit in front of the TV, I'm like, hey, today was a good day. Like write down what went right, because you want to go back and look at that. And that a lot of times for him, and it's been this way for me too, is the greatest kind of mindset you can get yourself in before going to bed. And just kind of remember what worked.
That I love that, and I hope everybody took note of that because that's pure gold. I mean, to journal and write down your goals and have that, because if you don't put it out there in the universe, it's not gonna necessarily happen. And so making sure that you put those things out there. And did you also write down like those BHAG goals, those big, hairy, audacious goals that like would probably scare someone? Did you write those down too in that?
Yeah, I wrote everything down. Like, growing up, it was all kind of secret about it. And I don't remember sharing it with many people. Like now, even to this day, so I talked about my son who gets nervous. I've got a daughter who doesn't get nervous at anything. She'll write it right down. She wants to be top 10. So it's 5th through 8th grade. She's just a 5th grader. She wants to be top 10 in the state and I'll go in her bathroom. It says top 10 on the state with a dry
That's
erase marker.
awesome.
She writes it right across.
Hmm.
So she doesn't really journal. She doesn't really write much, but she's not afraid to.
Yeah.
And that's something I noticed. I was never afraid of big goals, or never felt like, okay, um, if I don't reach it, to me, it's always a matter of, hey, we'll go get it next year. And I work in, there's a lot of times where I'm trying to land clients, and I just had someone ask me today, like, oh, how many clients have you not? I'm like, I've landed every client. But some of them are taking a long time. Like some of them took a long time, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not a one-time sale. Like some of them, maybe you would have thought maybe I'm naive, but yeah, it took
Yeah.
me 2 years for them to finally decide this is where they wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I look at goals that way too. I do notice kids, and especially athletes that have a fair amount of success, they're just a lot more. I don't know if I think it's society, we're doing something wrong, or they're just not given a license to like come up short. And so sometimes I'll notice they're kind of sandbagging goals, or not reaching for something big because they wanna check it off, and they wanna
Hmm.
um and it's just kind of talking through it, and I'm be like, hey, I mean, if you're getting better and better and better each week, and you're not reaching a goal, like that's something to celebrate. That's not,
Yeah.
that means you set a great goal. We also do a whole unit, kind of to caveat everything I've just said on, and I can find it in a book. I can't believe I should have written it down. But I had, in a professional sense, I had a woman who's summited like the top 7 peaks, kind of talk about, when you're summiting Everest, you basically, when you're getting to the top, the air is so thin, that you're like, it's literally like you're going up like 5 steps and then you're
Mhm.
stopping and letting your body acclimate. And sometimes you're having to actually go down in elevation before you can
Yep.
go even higher. And I think we talk a lot about that in the kind of span of a cross country season, right? Because if and I believe this with all my whole heart, if you are getting better every single week, you're either not like something's wrong. Like you're not putting everything into it, because there should be times where your body just doesn't have it. Like you either started from a place of a little bit too easy. You shouldn't PR every workout. Not everything should feel good. I had a coach in college who said, the third of the time a workout should feel good, a third of the time you should feel like garbage, and a third of the time you're just kind of neutral on it, like the work's done and that's what it is. And if it's any other kind of balance, like if you're just beaten down every time, like you might be battling something, you may be sick and we need to take a step back, or maybe the training load, like the mileage is too high. And
Mhm.
the opposite, if you're crushing everything, we can work you a little harder. Like there's your body's meant to be like, some of that confidence comes from battling through resilience and doing some hard things. And I'll you probably haven't asked this, but I say that too. I think a credit to all of you, because cross country is a hard sport. Like you're out there, you line up, and you can't blame. It's pretty clear how the result was. Like you're the only person that kind
Yeah.
of is impacted, right? Like you can have you can win a basketball team and you play like garbage. If you can kind of see it. It's easier. I know nothing against like volleyball players or any other sport, but it's easier to go do. It's easier to play volleyball than it is to do the sport.
Mhm.
With that said, I think it translates into, able to do hard things in the rest of your life, whether it's going into a job interview that you feel a little overwhelmed with, or taking a test. And um, I think there are a lot of parents who are like, oh gosh, my child gets nervous, or this is a lot of pressure. And we want to pave the way for our kids, and we want to make things easier. So we're like, let's find something that's an easier sport, or let's find something that's a little less pressure. Credit to all of you for sticking with it and doing it, because I think you'll see the dividends throughout your life. It just, there's a little bit of something that comes out of us in human beings when we're used to doing hard things.
Mhm. The kid just walks in. No, I love that.
Hey,
And
I'm
uh,
surprised I've not had one behind me.
yeah, yeah,
A
exactly.
couple are asleep, but not all of them.
Yeah. And it's funny, I've always said that like one of my biggest regrets is not playing volleyball and running cross country, but I'm just having like this aha moment. Like I am so grateful for the sport because of everything that you're talking about, the discipline, the ability to push through, being on it not being it is a team sport, but not being a team sport. Like you have to put yourself out there and compete, and what your training has done shows on the course of what you can do. So I love that. And I also think what you said before about the thirds, um, you know, April, Elise, and Soph, is that a big relief for you guys to know that you shouldn't be PRing every time? I mean, that's got to be like a huge aha moment for you, that you're gonna have the ebbs and flows and things are gonna come up, and just to keep at it and know that, what she said, a third of the time you're going to be great, third of the time it's just not going to be that. So I think that's super big gold. um does anybody have any questions? Nicole, this has been amazing. So much information that is tremendous for these athletes, whether they're cross country runners or not. Coach Jess, I'm sure you're getting a lot out of it, even though you don't coach cross country. um does anybody else have any questions for Nicole? And you could just unmute yourself, or however you want to do that.
And Kathy has my email too. I I don't want to speak over anybody if you have one, but sometimes I get off a call or something. I'm like, oh, I should have said this. Or so you're free to reach out via Kathy, or reach out directly if something doesn't come to you now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Elise, you got something?
I was just gonna ask if she watched anyone struggle with burnout and how she like overcame that or watched other people overcome that.
Great question.
It's yeah, so we try to yes. I think it's funny. I talked about at the very beginning um that I wanted to go to a school with a full track program and expected Northwestern to have a full track program. And I think one of the hardest things is when you go to a school that's cross country, indoor track, outdoor track. It's really 3 sports in one. And although I mean, again, track was my first love. I feel really fortunate because we really had a big period of time that I see the runners now not having. So to me, we had the flexibility to settle, like it was like, okay, here's a 12-week training block, and then you're going to get, 2 full weeks off, and then like 6 weeks of just kind of, really easy training, which really helped that. As far as coaching, we do a lot of, I mean, I've got, I think, every trick in the book. I mean, we do a lot of really gimmicky things, but like I've got like 15 digital cameras, and we do scavenger hunts where they're trying to take pictures when they're running, and things where you do a rep and then you roll dice, and then we give a prize out at the end for like the highest roll. I think I think good coaching and like variety really helps. Like if you are, and I've even had parents now, like my kids that are, and again, elementary school cross country, so take it with a grain of salt, but it can be scaled, I think, to any level. Who will say, gosh, we could do, I mean, we could build up their endurance. They could do more, 5 and 6 mile runs. And I'm like, hey, you've got time. I'm only with them 3 or 4 days a week. If that's important to you, I'm not going to tell anybody how to parent. But we don't do the same workout. We have 40 practices, and we never do the same workout. And I rarely, even now, I mean, I've been running for this long, I rarely do the same workout. So switch it up. I do think I mean, gosh, this was like the late 90s. I had like the earphones that were like just the AM FM radio. I miss when I was putting it on all this mileage, I just think like having a Garmin watch and having like podcasts or books on tape, or like finding something that it's like a distraction, like to take your mind away from, and it doesn't, again, if you're burned out, it should be easy miles. You should focus on getting or cross training, like get in the pool, aqua jog, swim laps, get on a bike. But I think there are a lot of things now where go with it, make it social, talk with a friend, figure out something you want to save a good, fun conversation for when you're out on the roads, or again, find something, I think back to even some of the best training I've done in the last decade. It was like when I had found a podcast that I just couldn't put down, and it was good. It's just kind of, you look for it. It's an escape alongside it. But as far as like, if someone's, a lot of times I think you see burnout in 2 different ways, right? It's either really emotional and just hard to get yourself up for like the competition. Like it's just like that part is really overwhelming. And then if you're track season, I say go do something you've never done, do a different event, do a different, do something completely different. So it's a different challenge. If it's cross country, a lot of times you don't have that flexibility. But maybe maybe break it up. Like I'll have somebody who's just really struggling with running, and I'll be like, you know what, we're going to work on the first 600 meters of your race, and we don't care about how anything else goes. We're going to get up both in a mentally, you're going to feel good about the start. You're going to feel good about where you are. You're going to be smooth. And then whatever happens, happen. I mean, they don't, but I'm like, I don't care if you drop out at 600 meters. But just taking it down into kind of a bite-sized portion, because it's a long and grueling sport. And sometimes you do need, I mean, again, tour coaches don't like to say it. Some coaches don't like to say it. I'm the first to say, look, it's a lot of times like your battle, whether it's a sickness or just general fatigue with life, 2 or 3 or 4 days off is not going to derail anything. Sometimes you come back a little bit more excited to put the work in. So I never, and my entire life, I've never felt guilty about that. I think there's more resentment that comes when you push through something, and then you kind of figure out sometimes after the fact, you do a couple of bad workouts, and then you've got strep throat or something 5 days later, and you're like, oh, I should, like a lot of times if you take it easier on the front end, it's just a cold. It's just so I think you listen to your body, be kind to yourself. Like like Kathy said, it's a lifelong sport. Don't be too hard on yourself for 1 week. If listen to yourself, if it feels like you need a step back, take a step back, go, find it. I think the last thing I'll say, I'm maybe throwing too much at you, is I think this is an old, like I went through a friend who lost a child and was just really struggling with grief. But I think it can be applied to a lot of different ways, and even kind of through different therapies. She shared this. You can go on like a run, or you can be anywhere. You can be in a blank room, and you try to think of like different, like really hone in on the five senses when you're doing something. So like, okay, like what can I taste right now? And maybe it's sweat or maybe it's blood, and you're like, I mean, it can be kind of but when you're all like, you're in fall, what am I, and then what can I see? Like, am I seeing the first start of red leaves, or am I seeing, a path that I've never seen before? Or am I seeing, okay, that church that I remember going to that I don't go to anymore? What do I hear? And it's funny, you can hear, if you're actually listening for it, you can hear kids playing 3 blocks away. And so you're almost out of like kind of that, because it's really a spiral when you're like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I don't want to be doing this. Running's not going well. And so you think of, you go through the five senses, and it takes a lot of and sometimes I've heard people say, you have to find 5 of each sense, which is crazy, but it can take, it can take a 30-minute run where you're trying to, think of 5 different smells you smell, whether it's, a plant or smoke from somebody barbecuing, or a car that just went by. And it almost like is also, I think, at least for me, it takes you out of that kind of like self-loathing. Not to say that you're doing that. And a lot of times you come away with like just feeling grateful for something that you wouldn't have noticed, right? Like you see the football players, playing, and you think of, okay, I'm going to a dance on Friday, or I see, somebody that I haven't seen in a while, and you maybe wouldn't even have noticed them if you were to, head down straight ahead. So I think it kind of just gets you into a place of, hey, my body still works. We are lucky to be able to do this. I'm sure you're all talented in your team. And I like to try and return back to like just the bigger picture of like, it's just a run. And if we can be grateful for kind of that, we're still able to do it. Sometimes it gets us out of that period of like, I don't want to minimize burnout, because it's certainly real. Rest first. But then yeah, try and, you get to see a lot of the, and I would say that, I don't think I mentioned that, but I've traveled a lot, even work trips, recreational trips. It's a great way to see the world. Like, it's just a great way to see new spots, mix up your route. Don't do the same thing. And it can be a short, you can do a 15-minute run, and, 5 minutes easy, 5 minutes, just a little bit step up from that, and then 5 minutes easy. And sometimes that's enough just to kind of shake you out of that funk.
Love that. Love that share. Soph, did you have a question? Mom's unmuting the phone. See if she can get it.
There.
There we go.
If you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Ooh, good question.
But that's a great question. I think the nutrition, again, I would have still had all of the cheat meals, like that. I wouldn't have, I still I like candy to this day, and things like that. But if I like, even now, if I start my day with like protein and like, eggs and yogurt and something good, I feel better all day long. And I don't have particularly great eating habits. So I would have just simple change, start with something like good, whole, good breakfast that fuels you for the day. And I think it's a lifelong thing. And then I think literally, if you're active, you can that's like more than half the battle. You can pretty much eat what you want, because you're not craving like that. The days this is embarrassing to say, but the days where I like had, a couple of handfuls of chocolate chips and walked out the door, for trying to fuel up for like, a busy day. It just, and again, from the time I was 16 till I was 40, it just, old habits die hard. But just smarter. And I don't mean that in any way. Like, sometimes, and eating the smart things, as opposed to just whatever was quick and handy. And then I think, taking it all with like a grain of salt, right? Like, I was devastated when Northwestern didn't add track. In hindsight, looking back, it probably prevented some of the burnout. And I was always very healthy, and it gave me a really, I was able to have a social life, was able to take a high level of classes. I don't know if that would have been the case if I would have been at Notre Dame and running basically running 3 sports, my life might have looked very different. I was devastated when a coach left, but I saw a whole different kind of level of training. It was different. I think it made me a more well-rounded person. I probably had a different, it took some of the pressure off of me, because the coach who recruited me, I felt like I had to always prove something to. It almost took it took a lot of pressure off me. I think I enjoyed my junior and senior more had I, running for somebody different who just saw me as another teammate or another person on the team. And yeah, I think, I guess kind of that same thing. I wish someone had said, it seems really anything that kind of any hurdle, any obstacle, seems like a lot, like right in the moment, right? This is something I learned later in life, but a lot of times I'll go through the exercise. Okay, am I going to be, is this going to bother me as much in 24 hours? Is this going to bother me as much a week from now? Is this going to bother me as much like 6 months or a year from now? And so often, I mean, I don't know that ever. I mean, even as much as losing somebody close to me or going through, something difficult in life, the answer is almost always it's going to get better with time. And it's a kind of the same thing, able to step back. Yeah, difficult races and difficult times where you came up short. It's not, I don't want to minimize it, but a lot of times it's like, yeah, is this going to still be a bummer tomorrow? Yeah, probably going to feel just as bad or worse tomorrow. By next week, am I going to be, just trying to blink away tears? Probably not. There'll probably be something else I'll still be bummed out about it. A year from now, am I going to be thinking about this race where I didn't run my best, or this workout that completely fell apart, or even this, even this friendship that's not gone the way I wanted to? No, there's going to be other things. And so I'm able to step out of that in the moment. There were a lot of times where it hits you hard, and that's human nature. But no, if you can realize that in the big scheme of things, it's you look back and you remember. I'll be honest, you remember there's some bad ones that stick with you too, and that's what enables this. That's what gets you out there early in the morning when it's cold. And I know what Minnesota winters are like. But you remember a lot of the good things, and you remember the relationships and the friends and the great races too.
That's great. Great. I think we have time for one more question. If somebody has a question, Jess or Lily or April, Bryn, any of you guys have a question? No? Awesome. Well, anything else that you want to leave us with, Nicole? I just am so thankful for you jumping on here and sharing all your, experiences and wisdom and knowledge, and love that you're giving back to the sport too by coaching. I know it's a passion of yours, and I'm the same with basketball, and it's fun to give back and see what the youth can do. And so thank you for doing that. Anything else that you want to leave these guys with?
No, I mean, nothing that I haven't said, just that, I mean, I'm proud of you all for making a hard choice, right? Picking a hard sport. I hope you hear that. I hope you're hearing that from other people. I hope your parents tell you. I hope your communities tell you. I think we don't say it enough. It's easy. It's so easy to just pick the easy thing. And I know that running is not that. And I know you're not all runners, but even just putting yourself out there and having a big goal, and with a very real risk that you come up short time and time again, I'm proud of all of you for going after it. So, and thanks for spending. I mean, I know it's important to you. You're miles ahead of a lot of people in your same shoes just by spending a little bit of time on a weeknight. So I'm glad to meet all of you. If I can ever do anything to help, I'm happy to do so. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for sitting in on this. I think there's a lot of gold that you can take away, and we'll see you guys soon. Nicole, if you want to stick around for a minute or two and
Oh,
we can
sure,
chat.
sure. Glad to.
All right. See you guys. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was
Hopefully I didn't
amazing.
ramble too much. I'm sure I could be more concise
No.
always, but off the cuff, it's always, but
No.
no, it's great, great. And good for you. I love that you're doing this. There should be more of this. I
Thank
feel
you.
like there's so many kids that need just guidance and someone else in their corner and a sounding board. So I'm excited for
100%.
this kind of venture for you, and
Thank
much
you.
needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fun to see you guys do amazing things, and love seeing all your kiddos grow up too. It's a lot of fun. So keep doing what you're doing too.
Oh, thank you. I say that. I always say, people are like, oh gosh, more youth sports, more of this. I'm like, what else would you want to be doing? I'm like,
Right?
I mean, I could be anywhere in the world tomorrow. I'm glad I'm going down to Normal, Illinois, and we're gonna run a cross country meet.
Yep,
These are
yep,
the days we'll look back. It's as much fun actually it's probably more fun to coach kids than it is when you're
yeah.
doing it yourself. So no, I'm very lucky.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, if you ever need anything, please reach out or holler, or if I can help any athletes in your world that send them my way or yeah. So
Oh,
thank you so
absolutely,
much.
absolutely. I'll send you my daughter as soon as she's getting into it. It'll be a good. She's played on a boys AAU team for the last
I
3 years,
saw
and now
that.
this is
Yeah.
yeah. So this is, I mean, we're kind of we're stuck a little bit. So she'll be a sixth grader, which is when the boys go to the bigger size ball,
Hmm.
and so I don't know. I mean, she could, but she's trying a girls' league, but they got her playing with like eighth grade, and they're just so much bigger. And I just think socially, she's in kind of a she wants to please. I don't want to see her like, shave off any kind of aggression or
Right.
uh, you know, really ability to be a leader and stuff because she wants to be liked by older girls. But I don't know, it's hard with the ball size with she's a good shooter too, and I don't want her going back and forth, but we're trying to figure out the spot for her this year. And again, it's 1 year, but it'll be tough to kind of find her spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember feeling that way too. I would purposely go play against boys because I didn't want to make the girls feel bad and understanding that, you can only control your emotions. And I'm sure you talked to her about that, but it's exciting to see that part of her and working through those emotions early, that she can have the opportunity to work with those other girls on her team and understand that. So when she gets up at a higher level and she's with girls that aren't quite as talented as her or want to push like her, that she's already got
Mhm.
it under control, that she can handle those situations.
Yeah, and we say, like I think she's been drawn to the boys game because the speed is a little bit
Hmm.
more, it's just quicker.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm like, look, you know how to play that way. It's just on you to elevate. You've got other good athletes.
Hmm.
You guys are gonna be very dominant if you get a
Heck
couple who
yeah.
like to run and gun and go at a bigger speed, so a quicker speed. So yeah, it's fun.
That's super cool.
It'll be a great. We're looking forward to the season, and it'll be a lot of fun. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks again, and you have a great night and
Hey, you as
hopefully.
well. Thank you. If I can help at all, don't or feel free to share my contact information. And I mean, anything I can help kids it's no extra thing on my plate. So anything I can do.
Super appreciate that. All right, we'll talk
All
to you
right,
later.
great to see you. We'll talk to you
Yeah, you
soon.
too. Bye.
Bye bye.